everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today we're reviewing brand new science fiction. Now you may be wondering to yourself why I'm reviewing this album now. It came out a couple of months ago at this point. I believe it was towards the end of August when this thing was first released. It's now early October, and so why such a long wait? I usually review new albums within like a week or so after they're released, just to be relevant. So why is this one so late? And there's a couple of reasons to that, honestly, which I just wanted to touch before I get into the actual review here. First of all, brand new, this band, of course, rather well known in their respective scene. I have heard about them for a good while now, but I hadn't actually gotten into their music really until, a little bit after this album was released. It's always a band that I really wanted to get around to. I believe I heard Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me at one point in the past. It didn't really stand out to me then, but I wasn't exactly, I believe I was doing something else while listening to it or something along those lines. So I didn't really get to fully experience the album. So as a result, when this album was released, I believe it was a surprise release or something along those lines, I decided, now's as good a time as any to really kind of, try to get into this band. So initially I got into listening to some of their other albums that they had put out in the past, and then eventually when I got to this one, of course I was listening to it a bunch. I initially planned to put it as part of my catch-up review series that I do like every half a year, where I talk about albums that were released in the respective half of the year that I didn't get to review for whatever reason. So initially this is where this was going to end up being, but I decided to do a full review for it just because as I was listening to this album initially, I was of course going back to it every day to listen to it, just for the sake of making a review of it. I did like the album, but just kind of going back to make the review of it. But the more I listened to it, the more I just kept coming back to because I really enjoyed it. And eventually there was a point where it was like for 2 weeks straight, I was listening to this album like every single day because I liked it that much. So I really felt it was warranted to make a full review of this project just because I do happen to really like it. So yeah, it's been a while since this thing was released. I've listened to it a lot since then, kind of like I was just talking about. So, what are my thoughts on science fiction after all these listens? And of course, like I said, or kind of like I implied before, I'm definitely not the biggest fan of this band, even though I now have gotten into this group and I do like their music. I like all the projects they put out to some degree. I definitely am by no means a super hardcore fan or anything like that. I just haven't been a fan long enough to consider myself one, to be completely honest. And even still, I feel like this is the album that I know most out of any of them, just because I spent so much time listening to it because I enjoyed it so much. And it's not to say I think it's my favorite album from them. Devil and God definitely gives it a run for its money, to be honest. But this one here, also pretty good. This album, just listening to it all the way through, has such a melancholy, sad, almost depressed feel to it, just from start to finish. And I do like how it is able to explore a lot of different things within this sound while still, maintaining that general theme of just sadness throughout it that I think works so well. You do occasionally have some more angry, aggressive moments that pop up. You have some more just downright depressing and just, paranoid moments as well as just some generally just sad stuff. But it never manages to get boring or repetitive or whiny, and that's another thing. It's just delivered so well here, this just overall feel of this project, that I can't help but find myself getting sucked into this album every time I listen to it. It's definitely an experience listening to this thing all the way through. It's not really an album that I feel like I'd be returning to individual tracks from, as much as I'm going to find myself wanting to replay the entire thing over and over again, just because it is such an experience from start to finish. This whole trip that this album takes you on, the emotional kind of roller coaster that it provides for you. And it is really enjoyable. Start with the opening track, Lit Me Up, which kind of starts off with this audio sample of someone just talking. And, it's kind of an interesting, sort of mysterious way to open up the album before launching into this song, which I do think is a really great opening here. And kind of throughout the album, occasionally we do get some more vocal kind of samples running throughout. They're never used to the point where they become annoying or excessive or just get in the way of the album's flow or anything like that. They definitely add to the atmosphere of the album rather than detract from it. And that's something that I do really enjoy, especially in a day and age where so many artists seem to kind of, just put skits or spoken word parts into their albums just excessively to the point where it ruins the flow of the project. Brand New knew what they were doing here on this one, and it just works rather well. Another thing I like about this album is that even though it runs a bit, longer, it's a little over an hour in length, it never really seems to be running super long for the most part. Like, usually I prefer shorter albums personally, and the fact that I was able to just frequently come back to this album despite its length over and over and over again really just shows that there's not really a weak point here on this project. Everything is very consistent, and like I mentioned before, the fact that it's kind of an album type of album where you want to listen to it in full and it just provides this whole sort of emotional roller coaster to it really makes it a project that you want to listen to in its entirety regardless of its length. And it never overstays its welcome, and it doesn't feel like it doesn't give you enough as well. It definitely provides you a nice amount of content. Some of the songs on this album I think just have really kind of creepy or interesting concepts in them. Take like 137 or 137, however it's pronounced, which just has these really creepy lyrics talking about Nagasaki and atomic warfare, and it just feels really apocalyptic. And it just works really well within the context of the project. The build-up on this track is just really just tension-filled, and you can definitely feel it while listening to it. And you have a track like 451 or 451, again, not sure exactly how that's pronounced, but which has a bit more aggression to it, or a bit more energy to it right at the end of this project. And once again, it kind of stands out for that reason as well. You have tracks like Desert, which has this very paranoid, almost kind of, not minimalist, but definitely a bit more stripped back of a feel to it, and it just, it works well within the favor of the track and just the overall feel that's trying to provide. This really paranoid feel is just what I get from the song, and it works really well. Then you just have some tracks on here as well that have some very, big choruses as well, like In the Water, for example, which just kind of explodes into this big, sad-sounding chorus that just works very well for the track as well. You have tracks like Could Never Be Heaven, which just has a very softer feel to it as well, but still kind of just sad overall. I know I feel like I'm saying that a lot here, but overall, just listening to this project from start to finish just provides a very sort of depressing mood overall, and it works, once again, like I said before, really well. The only complaint I really feel like I have with this album, and it's rather minor, is the closing track, Batter Up, which I just feel like runs a bit too long. I mentioned before I felt like the length of this album was pretty good all the way through, with the small exception really of this track here. This track is around 8 minutes in length, and I do feel like it could have been trimmed out a bit more to be a bit shorter. Not that it's a bad track by any means, I think it's a good song, but it's just a bit long, and especially at the end of the project, it just feels like it drags on a bit too much. And, it's not the worst complaint to have about this project, because overall, it's still a very solid track, like I said before. So overall, I'd have to say that Science Fiction is a very good album. Like I said at the beginning of this review, I'm by no means like a super massive brand new fan. I really can't consider myself that, given that I've only gotten into the band like maybe for a bit more than a month now. I've been consistently kind of listening to them, trying to get into their music. Which, I definitely have, especially this album here. Like I said at the beginning, I returned to this album for like 2 weeks straight, just listening to this album every single day. Especially in the evening, I was listening to it just, as the sun's kind of setting, and it's just getting darker out. I just feel like it matches the album's kind of feel really perfectly there. Just like this is an album that you kind of want to listen to like at night, or like when it's rainy out or like cloudy or something like that. Just a really kind of dark, depressing sort of mood, I think works really well with this album's sound. So if you could like listen to this album in one of those conditions, I know that's not always something that we have control over, but if you ever can do that, definitely try to do so, because I think it's really cool and definitely adds to the atmosphere of this project, which already provides a very solid atmosphere as it is. So yeah, this is a great project in my opinion. For someone who wasn't familiar with Brand New, I think this was a really solid album, though I don't think it's necessarily the best album to get into the band with, because like I said, it is not exactly the heaviest album. I know some of Brand New's other works have a lot more aggression to them at times. Here, not so much. It definitely goes more for the softer, sadder, more depressive feel, with the exception of a couple moments that appear here on some of these tracks. But overall, that's by no means a bad thing, especially if the full product at the end manages to pull off this sound so well, really. Overall, this is definitely one of my favorite projects of the year so far. I feel like it's a project that I'm still going to be coming back to even more in the coming weeks leading up to the end of the year, and I feel like you could definitely expect to see this on my year-end best albums of the year list. So if you want to hear me talk more about this album, make sure you check out that video whenever it comes out, probably at the end of this year, maybe early next year. So yeah, that's really everything I have to say. Make sure you check out this album, guys, though if you're into brand new, you probably already have, given that this video is coming out like over a month after this album was released. But, you know, for whatever reason, if you haven't done so already, check it out. And if you haven't listened to brand new yet, I highly recommend it because they have a lot of solid material out there. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future album reviews. I promise that I don't always review albums like a month after they're released. This is a rare exception. Normally I would have left this for my catch-up video, but I felt like it deserved the full video. Comment down below your thoughts on the project. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay golden.